Do you actually know the truth behind the fall of Robert Griffin III? There are a ton of misconceptions out there when it comes to his injury and who's really responsible. But the thing is, this injury didn't truly lead to his downfall, and I think the real reason his career was destroyed will shock you. Robert Griffin III grew up in a military family. Once his parents retired, his family settled down in Central Texas. As a high schooler, football wasn't actually Robert's best sport. That was track. In 11th grade, he was ranked as the #1 400-meter hurdler in the entire country. That same year, Griffin took over as the school's varsity starting quarterback. After 2 seasons as a starter, Robert was a 4-star recruit and ranked as the 6th best dual-threat quarterback in the class of 2008. After receiving offers from Tennessee, Kansas, and Nebraska, Griffin chose to stay in Texas and attend Baylor, where he could play both football and run track. He graduated high school a semester early so he could compete with the track team during the 2008 season at just 17 years old. To start his true freshman season on the gridiron, Griffin was the Bears' backup. However, on just the 4th drive of the team's first game, Robert was put in and never returned to the bench. In his first collegiate season, the 18-year-old completed 59% of his passes for 2,000 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. On the ground, he ran for 843 yards and 13 additional scores. After putting up these numbers, Griffin took home the Big 12 Freshman of the Year award. Heading into 2009, things were looking promising for the Bears' sophomore quarterback, but in the 3rd game of the season, Griffin tore his ACL and was done for the year. In 2010, Robert returned from his injury looking better than ever. He finished that season by completing 67% of his passes for 3,500 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. On the ground, he rushed for 635 yards and 8 more scores. There was now some buzz surrounding RG3. Even though the quarterback was now on a lot of people's radars, he wasn't favored to win the Heisman heading into 2011. He actually didn't even make the top 10 list of favorites. However, in the first game of the season, RG3 led Baylor to a huge upset win versus number 14 TCU. In that one, the QB completed an unreal 77% of his passes for 359 yards, 5 touchdowns, and no turnovers. Griffin continued to play at this high level as the season went on. And even though the Bears were projected to finish 6th in the Big 12 before the season started, they ended the year as the 13th ranked team in the AP poll, which was the highest the team had been ranked since 1991. RG3 finished the season by completing 72% of his passes for 4,200 yards, 37 touchdowns, and just 6 interceptions. With his legs, he ran for 699 yards and 10 more scores. It was clear Griffin was the best player in the country and deservedly took home the Heisman Award that year. After a historic season, RG3 declared for the 2012 NFL Draft. During the pre-draft process, it was pretty much universally agreed upon that Robert Griffin was the 2nd best quarterback in the class, only behind Andrew Luck, who was viewed as a generational prospect. A team that was in desperate need of a quarterback that year was Washington, but they weren't necessarily planning on drafting one. There was a big-name signal caller that just hit free agency, and Washington felt they had a chance to sign him. His name was Peyton Manning. Yes, Peyton Manning almost signed with Washington in 2012. Before he signed with the Broncos, he went to head coach Mike Shanahan's house to watch film and discuss his offense. But in the end, it obviously didn't end up working out, in part because Peyton would then have to play his brother Eli twice, as they both would be playing in the NFC East. So in March of 2012, Washington traded their 6th overall pick, 2nd round pick, 2013 and 2014 first round pick to the Rams for the 2nd overall selection. Everyone knew the team was trading up to draft RG3. The team had to give up so much draft capital just to move up 4 spots because other teams like the Browns were also trying to move up to number 2 so they could draft Robert Griffin. Draft day arrives and Robert Griffin III is indeed drafted 2nd overall. But RG3 wasn't the only quarterback the team selected in the 2012 draft. In the 4th round, they picked quarterback Kirk Cousins from Michigan State to back up their new 1st round pick. As the regular season approached, Robert Griffin was named the team starter. In week 1, the rookie was set to face off with Drew Brees and a Saints team that went 13-3 the previous season. And oh yeah, they were on the road in the Superdome, one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL. NFL. Despite the hostile environment, Griffin immediately made an impact, completing each of his first 8 passes, including one that went for an 88-yard score. RG3 just played unreal in his debut. He finished the game with a 73% completion percentage, 362 total yards, 2 touchdowns, and of course, a win. After this performance, he was named the NFC Offensive Player of the Week, which was the first time in history a rookie quarterback won the award for their first game. RG3 continued to play well as the season progressed, but the team as a whole, not so much. As Washington entered their Week 10 bye, they had a 3-6 record and were 3rd in the NFC East behind the 6-3 Giants and 3-5 Cowboys. However, after the bye, things started to change. In their first game back, the team took down the Eagles 31-6. Griffin completed 14 of his 15 passes in that one for 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. Pretty efficient if I do say so myself. Then the following week, Robert completed 70% of his passes for 304 yards and 4 touchdowns in a much needed win versus Dallas. I just need to pause here for a moment and emphasize just how good Robert Griffin III was during his rookie season. It wasn't normal for a first-year signal caller to come in and make this much of a positive impact. He was really already looking like one of the best QBs in the league at this point. In Week 12, Washington was set to face off with the best team in the division, the Giants. As a Giants fan, I haven't said those words in a very long time. It feels kind of weird to say. But anyway, in that one, Washington's win streak stayed alive as they took down their rivals 17-16. So now the team was 6-6, heading into a crucial Week 14 matchup with the Ravens. The Ravens, who were 9-3 at this point and would eventually go on to win the Super Bowl. But unfortunately, this is where things started to go downhill for RG3. With 150 left in the game, the Ravens were up 8. RG3 then ran with the ball but decided not to slide, resulting in him taking a big hit to the leg. Robert then got up very slowly and limped to the sideline with help from the medical staff. Kirk Cousins then went in, but before he even took the snap, RG3 told head coach Mike Shanahan he was good to go after this play. So after Kirk's incompletion, RG3 came back onto the field. Despite barely being able to walk, Griffin led his team all the way down to the Ravens 16. But then, in between plays, he fell to the ground in serious pain. He then was helped off the field yet again by the medical staff. After that, he didn't return to the game, and Kirk Cousins actually led the team to an overtime victory. A day later, it was announced RG3 had suffered a sprained LCL. So the question then arose, why was the quarterback allowed back into the game even though he could barely walk? Well, Mike Shanahan told the media he asked the team's orthopedist if Robert could go back in. The doctor said yes, so he had Robert go back out there. But then the team's orthopedist came out and said Griffin never even let the medical team look at him. And when you go back and watch the broadcast of this game, the announcer says RG3 signals to Mike Shanahan that he is good to go in the next play. So who knows who's telling the truth? Apparently it was just a miscommunication between Shanahan and the doctor, but if you do go back and watch the broadcast, you see RG3 is consistently moving around on the sideline. He's never sitting on the bench being checked out or anything like that. My question is, did Griffin tell his head coach that the doctor said he was good to go even though he never evaluated him? I don't know. That's definitely not a fact. I'm just sitting here speculating, trying to think of things that could have happened. Robert was ruled out the following week, but returned to the field in Week 16. In his first game back, he clearly didn't look 100%. Nevertheless, the team still won, bringing their post-bye week win streak to 6 straight. Everything then came down to the final week of the season. On Sunday Night Football, Washington was set to go head-to-head with Dallas. The winner of the game would also win the NFC East and move on to the playoffs. RG3 struggled in this game, but thanks to Alfred Morris rushing for 200 yards, Washington was able to secure the win and the division. On top of the NFC East title, Griffin was named to the Pro Bowl and won the Rookie of the Year award. So how was this team able to save their season and win 7 straight games? Well, simply put, their offense was pretty unstoppable. You see, the read option wasn't very popular in the NFL up to this point, but Shanahan's offense catered to his QB, who, used to be a track star. Depending on where the edge defender was rushing, RG3 could pull the ball away from his running back and sprint up the open sideline. This kept defenders guessing where the ball was going on the ground. When the read option was working well, play action was working even better, because then defenses had to figure out whether the ball was staying in RG3's hands, going to the running back, or being thrown. So after winning their division, Washington was a 4 seed and set to host the 5 seed Seahawks in the first round of the playoffs. It was a rookie versus rookie battle at the quarterback position, with Seattle being led by another outstanding first-year signal caller, Russell Wilson, who was a third-round pick. However, there was still concern surrounding the health of RG3. Before the playoff game, the team orthopedist told USA Today, quote, "I've been a nervous wreck letting him come back as quick as he has. He's doing a lot better this week, but he's still recovering and I'm holding my breath because of it." It was also reported that before the game, the QB kept pushing the medical staff to allow him to wear a less sturdy brace than the one they wanted him to wear. Early in the game, it was obvious Griffin was still not 100%. I would go as far as to say it was obvious he wasn't even 50%. On this play, he wasn't even touched, but came up limping and went to the medical tent. Well, not really a tent, more like a medical shed, I guess. Well, in said shed, Griffin repeatedly told the doctors and his head coach that he was fine and was going back in the game. Post-game, he said, quote, "You respect authority, and I respect Coach Shanahan, but at the same time, you have to step up and be a man sometimes. And there was no way I was coming out of that game." Despite their QB being limited, Washington still went up 14-0 by the end of the first quarter. Seattle went on to score 21 unanswered points, so with 7 minutes left in the game, Washington found themselves down a score. But then it happened. The inevitable happened. After a low snap, Griffin went to grab the ball off the field. Except when he went down to pick up the ball, he collapsed. His right knee just totally gave out. On that non-contact play, Griffin tore his LCL that he had sprained a few weeks prior and his ACL. So now 2 of the 4 major ligaments that stabilize your knee were torn. And remember, he just tore the same ACL a few years prior in college. When the news about the injury became public, Shanahan and the medical staff were under heavy criticism. Some said they should have never allowed the young QB to continue playing. Cousins shared that the coaches actually discussed putting him in midway through the wildcard game, but Griffin kept telling them he was fine. Teammates agreed that Shanahan couldn't really take Robert out, or the QB could lose all trust in his head coach. Griffin's knee surgery took place on January 9th, 2013. The usual recovery timeline for just an ACL tear is 9 to 12 months. So that meant if everything went perfectly, Robert would be ready to hit the field in October. But if you haven't noticed by now, Robert Griffin III doesn't like to miss games, and he will do anything to be out there with his team. So shockingly, on July 24th, 2013, Griffin was cleared to return to practice, just 7.5 months after his surgery. But before his return to the field, Robert called Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan, and Matt LaFleur in for a meeting in February. He wouldn't tell them what it was about, but just said it was important. So when all the coaches were seated in the meeting room, Robert went up to the whiteboard and wrote this: 1. Change things. 2. Change our protections. 3. Unacceptable. 4. Bottom line. He then asked his coaches to let him speak without interruption. He showed 19 clips of plays he deemed unacceptable. He said he would not be running those plays anymore and that they should be removed from the playbook. The majority of those plays were QB runs. Robert said he was now a pocket passer and not a mobile quarterback. The situation seemed pretty wild considering the guy making these demands only played 16 games in the league thus far. But head coach Mike Shanahan wasn't too surprised. He had heard these words and phrases before and knew exactly where they were coming from. Owner Dan Snyder. Shanahan later recalled, quote, "When Robert talked about unacceptable, that was a word Dan used all the time. He was using phrases Dan used all the time. There's only one way a guy who's going into his second year would do something like this. If he sat down with the owner and the owner believed that this is the way he should be used. He had to have the full support of the owner and, in my opinion, the general manager to even have a conversation like that." As soon as the meeting ended, Shanahan went to Dan Snyder's office and said, "Do you know what you're doing to this kid?"
I blame myself for not getting to the kid. He really believed he was Aaron Rodgers. And in time, though, you can learn to drop that game, and you will get better. But you got to do some of the things that we've been doing your rookie year just to keep the defenses off you.
After not playing a single preseason game, RG3 was named the Week 1 starter for the 2013 season. And guess what? Shanahan and his coaching staff did adjust the playbook to allow Robert to be more of a pocket passer just like he wanted. Except things did not go as planned for the QB in his first game back. Late in the third quarter, Washington found themselves down 33-7. Griffin had already thrown 2 interceptions and the pressure was getting to him, as he just sat back there in the pocket. Now that Washington wasn't running the read option, it became easier for defenses to guess and defend the plays they were actually running. His rookie season, RG3 had ample time in the pocket on play action plays because defenders were so scared of the option play. During his second season in the league, opposing defenders just weren't worried about him running the ball. There were 3 games during that 2013 season where Griffin completed less than half his passes. Interestingly enough, in the 2 games where he did rush 11 or more times, he had a passer rating of over 100. Then, after a Week 12 loss where Griffin threw for 118 yards and an interception, he was benched for the remainder of the season. Publicly, Shanahan said it was done to prevent the risk of further injuries, but I truly believe it was done because Griffin was playing so poorly. More recently, the QB has come out and said that the biggest regret in his career was playing that 2013 season. He said it's something he knows he shouldn't have done and he was never 100%. Washington ended the season with an abysmal 3-13 record, which resulted in Mike Shanahan being fired. Jay Gruden was then hired as the team's new head coach while Sean McVay took over as the offensive coordinator. Griffin was back under center to start the 2014 season, but in the first game of the year, the team didn't score a single touchdown. Then the following week, he left the game versus the Jaguars with a dislocated ankle. And when Kirk Cousins stepped in to replace Griffin, he actually played so much better than he had. Robert returned from his injury in Week 9, but when he got back under center, the team lost 3 straight after just winning 2 in a row. In Week 12, Griffin completed just 57% of his passes for 106 yards and no touchdowns. Following that game, it was announced RG3 would be benched in favor of Colt McCoy. McCoy actually ended up getting hurt, so Griffin was able to start the final few games of the season. But it wasn't pretty. He finished the year by throwing for 1,600 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions in 9 games played. To start the 2015 season, Cousins, not RG3, was named the team's Week 1 starter. Griffin ended up being the team's 3rd string QB and wasn't even active for a single game that season. After the year ended, the team released the quarterback that once looked like their franchise guy. Griffin then signed a 2-year deal with the Browns and was named the starter for Week 1 of the 2016 season. However, in the very first game of the year, Griffin injured his shoulder and was placed on IR. He returned to the gridiron in Week 14, but didn't throw his first touchdown pass till the very last game of the season. After a short but rough year in Cleveland, he was released yet again. Now, absolutely no one was interested in the once rising star. He remained a free agent for the entire 2017 season. However, after being unsigned for a full year, the Ravens offered him a 1-year contract in the spring of 2018. Baltimore had just drafted their new QB, Lamar Jackson, in the first round. Griffin was really brought in to mentor Jackson, who had a similar playing style to his. Sometimes I honestly feel like Lamar Jackson is what Robert Griffin could have been. Lamar didn't totally abandon his running ability. He slowly progressed as a passer and used his legs to help make things easier as he got more comfortable in the pocket. But what I find to be the most eerie contrast between the two is this. Late in the 2022 season, Lamar Jackson sprained his PCL. Just like the LCL, it's one of the 4 major ligaments that stabilizes the knee. After missing the final few games of the year, no one knew if the QB would be ready to go for the first playoff game. Ultimately, he didn't end up playing in the postseason due to the injury, and it did cause some controversy. After spending a few years as Jackson's mentor, Griffin was released in 2021, which marked the end of his football career. So why did Robert Griffin III's career fall off a cliff? Why did he go from a Pro Bowler to a free agent no one wanted in just a 5-year span? Whose fault is it? Is it Mike Shanahan's fault for letting him stay in those games? Is it the medical staff's fault for not clearly ruling him out? Unfortunately, at the end of the day, I feel like Robert Griffin III is the one responsible for his fall from grace. But it's a really complicated and complex thing. Robert was a 22-year-old rookie when he sprained his LCL. All he wanted to do was go back out there and play. His team was on a win streak, and if they kept on winning, they would make the playoffs. At the time of his injury, every game was a must win. Every snap mattered so much. Frankly, fans love it when players go out there and fight through injury. Fans call them warriors, gladiators. They are praised for how much they love their team and receive just an immense amount of respect for going out there and putting their body on the line. But on the other hand, when players don't play through injuries that fans may see as minor, their love of the game is questioned. Their competitiveness is questioned. People say they don't care about the team or winning, and some say they're just there to collect the check. So did the injury ruin RG3's career? In my opinion, no. Obviously, it didn't help his development, and it definitely did slow him down a little bit, but he was still extremely fast and athletic. The truth is, he should have never rushed back for that 2013 season. He should have let himself heal all the way, so one of the most crucial parts of not just his game, but the team's entire offense would be 100%. I understand wanting to be a pocket passer after suffering an injury like that, but you can't just totally remove the trait that was propelling you to greatness. It would have been ideal if he slowly became more of a pocket passer, eased into it, still using his legs at time to keep the defense honest, which would have given him ample time in the pocket to make the right reads and simply get comfortable back there. He was never a pocket passer before he decided to become one his second year in the league, and it just didn't work out. He had no pocket presence, and he struggled reading defenses. One of the biggest what-ifs in NFL history has to be if Robert Griffin III didn't rush back in 2013 and didn't rashly become a pocket passer. What would have happened to the QB's career then? Would he still be a starter in this league? Would he be an all-pro? Who knows? Lamar Jackson is maybe what Robert Griffin III could have been. If you want to learn about his story and see what RG3 could have possibly been, check out this video up here.